Hello, it's Feathered Lamb, and this illustration is called Glamour. I painted it on February of 2022, and it came to life because of a prompt. For ease of understanding, I'm going to literally define the word. Prompt: to cause or bring about an action or feeling. Synonyms: bring about, cue, elicit, provoke, evoke. In other words, a prompt is anything that brings upon inspiration for an illustration. You could say that all art is prompted by emotion, a song, a vision, a concept, but that's not the case. Prompt is not synonymous to inspiration. For example, if you decided to participate in Inktober, you are being purposeful with your intention. For those who don't know what Inktober is, it is an event where artists have a set of prompts per day, usually a single word for all 31 days of October. The challenge usually involves drawing in ink, as the name implies, but you don't have to draw in ink if that's not your medium. By choosing to participate in Inktober, you're aware that you're entering a challenge where the objective is to draw something according to a pre-existing prompt given to you. Inspiration is not given to you, it's something that happens to you. If you hear a song and you can envision a music video and decide to draw an illustration based on that, quote, music video, the illustration is inspired by the song. However, if you play a song with the purpose of it to conjure an image for an illustration, it is no longer an inspiration, it is a prompt. Prompts are incredibly helpful in art because it provokes thought that you were having difficulty conjuring beforehand. Especially if you are burnt out, going through art block, are indecisive, or worse yet, you get decision paralysis when presented with a whole world of choices and possibilities. Prompts are a great way to knock the initial barrier away. Now you have direction that you didn't have before, somewhere to start looking at that isn't a blank page. This illustration was prompted by heart eyes, which is why I added heart rings around the character's pupils. I am a very visual person, and by that I mean that I see images in my head. These images, these movies, are what help me envision an illustration, but sometimes the images run too quickly by my head because I can't settle on anything. Or the ideas are so fickle that the images are just blurs. In other words, I'm throwing things to the wall, but nothing sticks. Prompts, however, are like dominoes. Once you hit one, the rest begin to fall one after the other, and I simply follow. When I read Heart Eyes, I immediately saw a character in my head, a siren-like woman who hypnotizes her prey, and she does so with the heart rings that appear in her eyes. And that was the first domino. But like I said, prompts don't stop there. They don't work by themselves forever. They ignite a spark that turns into a wildfire when they encounter your lived experience. At the time I read this prompt, my grandmother told me that when she was in school, she learned a traditional dance of her island called danza. For those that have no idea what it is, imagine a type of waltz. Back in the day, this was danced by affluent people in balls. Eventually, of course, it trickled down to all social classes. One thing that arose in these balls was the language of handheld fans. Teenagers and young women were expected to attend these balls to find a husband. They were not to go without a chaperone, and they were not to speak freely either. They were, however, given a little book by their parents of all the boys they could dance with. These boys were acceptable suitors from families approved by the girls' parents. The language of handheld fans arose within all these circumstances. With that in mind, I'm not going to describe all the intricacies of the language, but the pose my character has is the one of a blown kiss with the fan opened in front of the mouth. So when I was prompted by Heart Eyes to draw a siren-like woman, my lived experience of listening to my grandmother teach me about our culture inspired the setting and the plot. Other little things also inspire some of my decisions, little dominoes, if you will. For example, the character has a turban, which is traditional attire from a different traditional dance, bomba. And the flowers on the fan are violets, the birth flower of February, the month I painted this illustration on. The nose piercings from Taino heritage. Prompts are something I hadn't worked with before this illustration, and yet I found myself immediately wondering why I hadn't because of how well it worked. You can definitely find many challenges on social media like Instagram or Artful that are prompt centered. Artful in particular has a tab just for challenges. The prompts may also vary. There may be words, themes, or even color palettes. You don't have to actively participate in the challenges to still partake in the prompts either. You can also check out apps or generators that give out prompts, or even just ask a friend to give you a word. Make sure these prompts, though, are vague in nature. They're meant to be a starting point, not detailed how-to instructions. Prompts are an important exercise, if nothing else, and a new original illustration just waiting to happen at best. So I would advise to give it a try, give it a chance, and if you do, let me know how it works out. Before I go, I want to share that I have been thinking of expanding Glamour and make the illustration into an actual scene, not just an up-close pretty girl. I make no promises, of course, but keep your eyes open nonetheless. Thank you for tuning in. Click on the white subscribe button down below. You will know when you're subscribed when it turns from white to gray. Have a magical day.